Sometimes cool things happen, and sometimes those things are even cooler because of who initiated them. Just like grassroots political movements or community-run initiatives, people organising amongst themselves is inspiring. And if any of you know me by now, you know that I love the power of the people. And so it was that on Friday, November 7th, 2025, the Rift community organised a fresh reroll event in an attempt to boost player numbers and breathe new life into this kind of forgotten but enjoyable MMORPG. And I say enjoyable because I have been enjoying it. I've often kicked around the idea of downloading and playing the free-to-play game, but there was always some other release or expansion coming out for something else that I had more interest in. So this was the little push that I needed to take the plunge, and I am genuinely glad I did. When I booted the game up, rolled a character and chose a server, the event seemed to have worked. I saw new players being announced on the server every few minutes or so. And throughout my entire time playing it, there were always people around slapping massive-headed goblins about. So success, I guess. Well, relatively, of course. It would seem that the Steam numbers have doubled from what they were a few months ago, and I have no idea how many people are playing through the native launcher. I find this even more impressive given who owns and runs it. That's right, everyone's favourite exploitative parasites Gamigo. Or is it a Gamigo? Like Amigo? I've watched enough Josh Strife Hayes videos to know how they roll. Buying up an MMORPG on their deathbed and then slapping some tassels on its nipples and shoving it on stage for it to tiredly gyrate for those last few entrenched players to throw a few quid at it until it dries up, has cardiac arrest, and then gets thrown in the trash. They're not exactly known for investing in the games they buy. They don't call it life support mode for nothing, like some kind of twisted necromancers keeping the poor tortured soul limping on, wishing only for the sweet release of death. Literally the bare minimum. A calculated mathematical equation of upkeep cost versus the trickle of cash coming in from the few lonely whales still swimming through an empty digital ocean. The perfect encapsulation of a capitalistic system in action. Which is why I find it so cool that despite Rift's abusive parents, the community actually managed to get enough traction online to visibly see a bump in player count. This may have been in no small part helped by outlets like Massively OP running stories about it to help signal boost the plan. But what exactly is a Rift, I don't hear you say because you have clicked on this video from this tiny jackass channel about a niche game in an increasingly unpopular and ageing genre? Well, Rift is an MMORPG originally released in 2011, hot on the heels of the World of Warcraft Cataclysm expansion, created by Tryon Worlds. I mention World of Warcraft here because you may already know that Rift decided to really lean into the popular trope that had emerged in the genre of what was commonly known as the WoW killer. Essentially, any new MMORPG that was released with some anticipation was always touted as being the game that could potentially unseat the Blizzard behemoth. Smash cut to 2025 and the evidence is that we are still waiting for that fabled game to step forward and drive the knife into WoW's back. I guess we'll just have to wait a little longer. But back to Rift. They were particularly aggressive with their marketing, even being so bold as to state that you weren't in Azeroth anymore. Shots fired, run the meme, etc, etc. Which I find kind of funny because upon having now played Rift, World of Warcraft is the game that I think it most reminds me of. Aside from the Elder Scrolls Online style world events known as Rifts, which bear an uncanny resemblance to Dolmens, which coincidentally Rift came up with 3 years earlier than ESO, it plays very similar to WoW. So while we were told we weren't in Azeroth anymore, kinda felt like I was. You even have two warring factions and many of the same generic fantasy tropes. Ultimately, Rift fell foul of financial and just mismanagement in general, which led it into the hands of Gamigo and its current state in 2018. Either way, Rift is actually good. It's not perfect. A lot of that may have something to do with its arrested development, but it plays well and the environments are nice, and more importantly, I'm still playing it now. I don't know how much of that is to do with me having lowered my expectations so low, owing to having heard it be maligned and labelled as dead, but it's like when they remade RoboCop and I just assumed it was going to be so shit that when I actually came to watch it, I sort of enjoyed it. A bit, let's not go too mad. It was still shit after all. But I think it does stand on its own merits. And part of its charm is that it is a little janky. I started off rolling what seemed to be a necromancer, but it didn't feel particularly fun to play, so I rolled a warrior, and that was, well, shit, to be honest. Before writing this script and after playing the game for some time, I rewatched the Josh Strife Hayes Worst MMO Ever episode on it and found out that I did exactly the same thing as him and didn't add any skills to my action bar, so just stood there doing RuneScape combat using a basic attack and waiting to see which one of us would die first in the starting area. Which is slightly baffling because every other class I tried seemed to have skills already on the action bar as soon as you joined the game. Peculiar. But whatever. All part of the janky charm. I finally settled on what seemed to be the Hunter Ranger class, and me and my hog spent the next day or two running around Talara. I leveled up, I got new pets and abilities, and more importantly, settled into that classic MMORPG rhythm that I love. And because of the way in which the Rift system works, you can just relax and wheel from event to event in a sort of mind-off way, shooting stuff and continually thinking, why did this game not do as well as it clearly should have? Especially when you look around at some of the other MMORPGs that are still out there peddling their wares. In my time playing so far, I have gotten 2 characters to level 20 from the 2 different factions and explored the first 2 maps for each of them. So let me just pick out some points of interest. The game has a fairly robust skill and class system which I haven't really gotten to play around with yet, mainly because as you level up it just gives you the option to spend your points and it automatically assigns them based on whatever class variant you chose at creation, of which there are quite a few and some of them you have to pay for to get access to, but there are a lot of standard ones to choose from, so no real issue there. I don't know whether this system of automatically spending points was there from release or whether this was something brought in to allow players to get into the game easier, but I could see you using this to get to max level and then being able to reassign all your points and really play around with all the different class variants to min-max a bit. In terms of actually playing, both classes I played for any length of time did have a classic builders and spenders playstyle whereby you build up points displayed under your character bar and then you spend them on high damage moves or, in the cleric's case, self-heals. One class I always gravitate towards when playing MMORPGs is a hunter class, as I like having a pet battle alongside me, and here we have different pets for different occasions. You start off with a warthog type thing, then I got a wolf, and then I found my bestest friend, the griffin, which is more of a ranged specialist. He was also more of a parrot than a griffin, which is novel. But I think my favourite character is the cleric bad boy with his big old spiky headbuster. He felt simple to play, but my progression was way faster than the ranger. But who needs complexity when you can just batter stuff with a mace? This is most likely the character I will continue with. I was following the quests I got, picking them up wherever I saw them available, but after a while I just decided to roam free, adventuring about and clearing the map, just to see what else was available. This is when things felt the most Guild Wars 2 as I ran about and got involved with whatever I came across. Not only is there rifts opening up all over the place randomly, but there are quests that you just stumble into. So you can just kill or collect a certain number of things when you're in an area and then mosey on down the road and do the same somewhere else. Which I think is why I started to enjoy it, because it provided a sort of free and easy time just making my own fun. I will say that it felt like enemies have a very small aggro range, which kind of made the NPC AI feel a little bit derpy. But perhaps as you move into higher level zones, things get a bit more dangerous. I did go into the next zone, but I think that any small spike in difficulty was more due to the higher level enemies than more aggressive enemies. Let me know in the comments if things change much as you progress. If we are picking a few holes, then the game did crash on a number of occasions, most specifically when jumping down hills. Something I saw other people in chat talking about, so maybe that's a thing. Fuck knows why. I did try to use the group finder for some dungeons and the instant adventure option where it just loads you into a group, but this felt very aimless, and unfortunately my dwarf's tiny little legs and the lack of a mount at that point meant that I sort of spent most of my time just running after everyone rather than filling people in. Reading online, I saw people saying that no one uses the group finder anymore, and that seemed to bear out in my experience as I never found a group the whole time I queued. The instant adventure was much better for that, and I got in almost immediately, but as I said, I wasn't quite sure what was actually going on, and so in the end didn't see much benefit of it. Although, from reading online, this might be the best way of levelling a bit quicker. In conclusion, go play this game for a bit. Even if you don't end up becoming a fan, seize the opportunity while there are still people around and experience it for yourself. You never know, you might like it. And you can contribute to the community effort to try and get the game going again just by adding another body to the world. It's free, so there's no reason not to. Not that Gamigo deserves it really, as Bree Royce from Massively OP mentioned, as it might give those greedy fucks some bad ideas, but the game itself does deserve it, and so does the community. I do have to wonder what could have been for this game if it had continued to get support and development. I'd love to think that maybe we will get a chance to see it in the future, but I think this game sits here now like the once great nation of Sparta reduced to an oddity and a peculiarity, with Athenians coming by to observe their quaint and outdated traditions, a relic of the past, caught in stasis. I'm glad I gave it a go, and I will pop in and out and keep an eye on what comes next for Rift, whatever that may be. It's a shame what happened to this game, and hopefully this event can give it a bit of life back and prolong it for just a little bit longer. Thanks for watching. I've got a couple of different projects in the works, and I wanted to just do a quick video about my experience with Rift and this event. I've been working on a Super Metroid video that I replayed recently, but it has become apparent to me that that's going to require a little bit more research and maybe a little bit more time, love and care put into it to really sort of do it justice. So expect a few more short videos like this until I get that done. Go play Rift, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.